Let's go to the Roman guest line, Chelsea, and bring in our friend Dan Szymborski, the senior writer at Fangraphs.com, creator of the Zips player projections. Dan, am I off base here? Do you miss a guy just throwing down on a guitar and just shredding for a little while, or am I just being an old man here?
Oh, no, I'm with you. I was born in 1978, so I grew up kind of at the end of 80s music. And, you have the song and the chorus, and then the second part, then the chorus, and then the guitar solo that repeats the main melody on the guitar. And that you can kind of sing along to, even though it's just a guitar.
Exactly.
I miss it. That was great stuff. Sometimes I like to, on Twitter and social media, to make people feel old, I'll tell them events in history that are closer to Nevermind than Nevermind is to today. You don't want to go down that path, though. It's been a long time now. We're talking 30 years. So
I know. I knew it was an old man reference, but I had to put it out there nonetheless. Well, the Yankees have been shredding Major League Baseball to the tune of 10 consecutive games. How are they doing this, Dan?
Well, one of the things that people are underestimating about the Yankees is that their pitching is still very, very good. All of a sudden, people thought Garrett Cole couldn't pitch anymore because of the sticky stuff ban. But he's been rocking this year. Luis Severino is, he's not throwing 9 innings or anything, but nobody does. They're being careful with him. Nestor Cortez, Jordan Montgomery, they're all pitching very well. And I think people underrated that rotation coming into the season.
All right, Dan. So of Fangraphs, which is known for compiling all of these stats and numbers that aren't just batting average and on base percentage. So we are in the business of, what is that? I thought I heard something, but so we're in the business of trying to predict these games and trying to tell which teams are actually good. So for a beginner looking at these stats, which are the stats that are most important when trying to predict a team's success?
Well, it always depends on exactly what you're trying to predict. For instance, in season, even when you get to the end of the season, the win-loss record from run differential, which you sometimes see called Pythagorean theorem or Pythagorean record, is still more predictive than the team's actual win-loss record. Because what it comes down to is that teams that are really good tend to blow out their opposition more. Teams that aren't tend to win more close games. And so that sometimes fools people a lot later in the season because you'll have a team that's 10 games above 500, but they've been outscored. So in season, for example, win-loss versus run differential is much more predictive.
Talking to Dan Szymborski, senior writer at Fangraphs.com. He's also on Twitter at D Szymborski. That's SZYMBORSKI. Dan, how bad are the Reds?
They're pretty bad. They're probably not this bad because they've lost 19 of 22, and nobody does that over the long haul. But you look at the team; they traded, so many of their contributors this year. Yeah, they still have Joey Votto, but he looks kind of nearly done, I hate to say. They've had some injuries. They've missed some pitching. It's not a very good team. And at this point, I think they have a negative cushion large enough from the Pirates that I think that they're the favorite now to be the last place team.
All right, Dan. So looking at some of these predictive metrics, is there a team or a player that you think has been underperforming and is due for maybe a breakout in the next few months?
Well, I'm still hopeful about Kikuchi with the Blue Jays because he was someone I really liked coming into the season, but he has had command issues. But one of the things that people have missed about Kikuchi in recent years is that he throws a lot harder now than he did when he came to Seattle initially. And people don't really get what a hard throwing lefty is. One of the hardest, I think it was the second hardest throwing lefty starter last year. But when you're talking about just general in-season stats like FIP do a pretty good job. And you look at, for example, Kevin Gausman, he's actually pitched better than his ERA this year. Yeah, he has an ERA just over 2, but he's also right now, he's looking like Corbin Burns last season. I mean, we're talking 41 strikeouts, no walks so far. So Gausman could be even better than he's pitched so far.
Dan, when you look at Mets, Chelsea and I always joke around about the Mets metting, and they always start off great, but at some point they start to fall off and things go haywire. This season feels like it might be different. Do you believe in the Mets?
I believe in them, but as much as you could believe in the Mets team, I always joke that when you talk with Mets fans, anytime there's kind of a sunny day, it's the sunnier it is, the more they know that the rain is coming, because that's kind of the fact about being a Mets fan. Yankees fans tend to be more optimistic, but Mets fans are just waiting for the other foot to drop. But one thing you do like about this team is they are winning without Jake DeGrom so far. So you can't say that they're reliant on him. This team actually does have pretty decent depth. Not perfect. Robinson Cano, looking kind of toast-related, has kind of reduced that. They DFA'd him. But I think this team does have better depth than they did kind of in the late Wilpon era.
Well, let's talk about the Angels for a second. A team that on paper looks like they should contend each and every season just because they have Mike Trout, they have Ohtani. They certainly have the superstars, but in years past, they've either been battling injuries or their bullpen has been really bad. So we've seen them start off hot this year. What's standing in the way for the Angels and the playoffs this season?
Well, I think what it comes down to is this is a team that beyond their first few stars has had a real difficult time just putting secondary talent on the field, finding those next couple tiers of players. And so it's really been, Mike Trout and Shohei Ohtani and usually one or two other players carrying the team. And that's really not enough. It's not basketball. It's not football. I do think that if they continue to get, the performances the way they have from Taylor Ward, because Taylor Ward, he has an OPS 60 points above Mike Trout so far this year. He's having a terrific year. Brandon Marsh has played well. Patrick Sandoval just allowed his first runs in his fourth start. If they continue to get contributions from the secondary talent, all of a sudden they can take the AL West. But if they fall back, Trout and Ohtani won't be enough.
We're talking with Dan Szymborski, the senior writer at Fangraphs.com, creator of the Zips player projections. Dan, is there a player that has surprised you early on, particularly a pitcher? You were talking about the Angels, and I was remembering how Dylan Cease was just so spectacular yesterday. Is there a guy that maybe isn't necessarily on our radar or who has started off really hot that you expect can continue having a fantastic season?
I'm still a little worried about Noah Cindergard. He has had a very good start, but he also doesn't look quite like the Cindergard in past. He's not really striking out guys, and that is something that does tend to be very predictive. Another thing we look at is StatCast actually keeps this. They keep what they call expected statistics. That's things like slugging percentage based on the data from hit balls rather than what actually happened. It says guys that have underperformed. For example, Luis Robert of the White Sox, StatCast metrics thinks he should be slugging 300 points higher than he actually is. He's had some really loud outs. He's had a rough start, relatively speaking, and he could be someone who breaks out considerably.
What's going on with the Sox? They've had an abysmal start to the season for a team that was supposed to run away with the division.
Yeah, it doesn't look like they're running away with it. You look at their lineup, they do have a few injuries, but they didn't really address some of those weaknesses as well as they could have. So they're seeing, too many at-bats from Adam Engel, too many at-bats from Gavin Sheets than is ideal. They didn't really replace Nick Madrigal at second base. I mean, it was Leury Garcia and Josh Harrison. And that just hasn't really worked out for them. Now, eventually, they'll have Jimenez back full-time. They'll play better than they have. But it becomes a race at this point, because if the Twins build a cushion, they're going to be harder to stop. Even if you think the White Sox are better than the Twins, they still do. I usually use the example of me running a race against Usain Bolt. He is a lot faster than me. But if you give me enough of a lead before he's allowed to go, then I can win the race. Like if you start me off at meter 90 of the 100-meter dash, I can win at that point.
So, Dan, can the Red Sox turn things around since we're talking about the White Sox? How about the Red Sox? We have Lucy Burge on this show on a regular basis, and she's always talking about how Boston's going to turn it around. Boston's going to turn it around. Is Boston going to turn it around?
I think so, but the problem is how soon will they turn it around? Because that is the toughest division in baseball, and they could turn it around, but be 12, 15 games out at the time. Yeah, there's an additional wild card this year, but with the Angels playing well, the Mariners looking good, the Astros still playing decently, the Twins surprising, they could find themselves in kind of a pretty ugly mathematical situation, let's just say, if they don't really turn it around kind of in the next month. If they're still below 500 at the end of May, I think then it becomes a little more problematic for them.